Hi, this is Paul. Sorry for the lack of production lately. It's just a very busy time of year. Yesterday or the day before, I don't remember. Everything's just been a blur lately. Jordan Peterson released his September Patreon question and answer in August. They said, this is September. I thought, what? No, it's August. Don't tell me it's September yet. Can't be September yet, but it was August. But he released September, and it was a very good one, even with the technical glitches. He apparently is going to release the first conversation with Sam Harris on September 1. He answered a lot of very interesting questions, not a lot of questions actually, but the questions he answered were quite interesting, especially the one with Jung and the one world. I thought that was a fascinating answer. There were a lot of very interesting answers in this one, and it was very much worthwhile, including the conversation about his takeaways from the Sam Harris talk. Now someone sent me a message, and I haven't responded back to him yet. I just read it last night. I think things have just been crazy busy. It's the beginning of fantasy football season, so there are draft parties. Kids are going back to school. My wife is stressing because she's got to get her classroom ready. It's just finished vacation, so it's just crazy busy right now. But someone says, is this too much Jordan Peterson? And my answer to that is that my whole thing really isn't about Jordan Peterson himself. And the kinds of things that Jordan Peterson was talking about are the kinds of things I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. And so, as I mentioned to Jordan Peterson when I met him at the Sacramento book tour thing and the VIP thing after, I thanked him because this has been one of the most productive and fruitful learning experiences of my life. I've been just learning a ton. And so this has brought up so many new, smart, and interesting conversation partners I can't keep up. And some of you, and you know who you are, I'm not going to out you. You send me emails with links and conversations, and I don't always have time to get back to you. So please forgive me and be patient with me. And so many interesting conversations online, and it's just been so much. And also new group conversations in real life. I was just talking, Matt just texted me yesterday. Matt's the guy who did the Jordan Peterson conversation a month or so ago. And he lives in Fresno, and they're going to start a Fresno meetup, and I'm going to help them launch that on September 10. And he said he just put a thing up on Meetup, and he didn't pay any attention. He just looked, and 13 people signed up. They had 4 people come up to Sacramento from Fresno. And so, this thing just keeps going. But again, this isn't just about Jordan Peterson. What Jordan Peterson has managed to do is kind of, I liken it to a wick. A candle is a funny thing because the candle burns the wax, but the wick is what gives the thing focus and center, and that's in a sense what Jordan Peterson is doing. He's kind of the wick for a bunch of conversations that have been pent up culturally, and it was the man in the moment, boom, right at the right time, and there are all these conversations going. And so in a sense, I have to keep mentioning Jordan Peterson because he's like the wick, and that's where people find each other. Even our Jordan Peterson meetups here in Sacramento, we always have the first 2 hours, which is our official meeting, and then usually another 2 hours after that, where those who want to stay until the last dog dies hang around until I have to kick him out of the building. But, this is what we're talking about, and it isn't just about Jordan Peterson or his ideas. What he's facilitated is the opportunity for a bunch of us to find each other and to give us a framework and a language and at least a starting place from which to have a lot of interesting conversations that we've been thinking about and talking about, but have been wanting to have. And there's Freddie wanting to know if the Freddie and Paul show up. Is that, yes, Freddie, I posted it yesterday. So even in Sacramento, I'm doing some thinking about new types of forums to host and creative ways, because we've been doing the meetup thing for about 12, 13 times, and that's going well. And so that's going to continue to go well. But I'm thinking about online ways of doing things, and I'm also thinking about how can we structure better conversations with each other where, again, as a Christian pastor, obviously for me, I want to talk about the meaning of life, the center of existence, what's the basis of morality, all of these questions that aren't just Christian questions. And this is part of where I'm going to go with Plato and Augustine and Dallas Willard, and actually the Jordan Peterson question and answer in September led into some of that. But again, I've got a lunch appointment in Fairfield, so I just don't have time today, or it seems like any day, to actually make all the videos I want to make. So here's some other very small channels that are really worthwhile listening to. Node in a Network. He friended me on Facebook early on, and I think he's staying quasi-anonymous. I don't know the deal, and there's reason for people to do that. But so he's doing some Northrop Frye things on Friday, and he's got Maps of Meaning Monday. And this is a smart guy, and he's thinking through the stuff. This particular guy's a Christian, and he's thinking through these things, and he's bringing in C.S. Lewis. He's doing a lot of the same stuff I don't have time to do, but he's doing it well. So subscribe to his channel, give him a listen, and check him out. If he suits if he's scratching where you're itching, you'll be blessed. So I've been enjoying listening to him, and he's given me a taste of Northrop Frye. So I picked up Frye's book, The Great Code, because it isn't in Kindle, and so I'm starting to make my way through this. Frye and Vico, a lot of interesting stuff about speech assumptions, and some really interesting things in there. So if I'm not producing enough for you, you can go check out his channel. Andy, who I had a conversation with not too long ago. Andy's he gave up Christianity. He says he can still speak in tongues, and he used to be he went to Oral Roberts University. And so Andy kind of posted a response video to Jonathan Peugeot and his Santa Claus conversation, the conversation that I had with Jonathan. Again, here's a fun conversation partner that we can debate some ideas. And I say, Andy, the post-Christian beard. Sorry, Andy, I shouldn't name people, but there's so many of you out there. It's hard to keep you straight. But I listened to Andy's video last night, and thought he really articulated well, I think, God aspect one, and pushed back on Jonathan Peugeot's Santa Claus existing. And again, this gets into the question of definition within a materialist frame. And my questions for him back would be, what is the Disney Corporation? Harari goes into this in his book Sapiens about the Peugeot Corporation. But the Disney Corporation is immaterial, and it is, so Mickey Mouse, the existence of Mickey Mouse is all in that. What about the existence of Walt Disney? Now, Walt Disney, the man, is dead, obviously. Nobody here is going to deny that Walt Disney is a historical figure, or that Walt Disney did or did not do certain things. But if you think about what a modern corporation is, you get into this God aspect number one. And I think Andy was talking about it well there. And now Jonathan has his own schema, and Jonathan on Twitter mentioned some more Greek fathers that Andy should read. I don't know if Andy's going to read them or not. I hope he does. I haven't read them. I'd like to read them, but I don't have time even to make the videos I want to make, not to mention read all the books I want to read. So, this God aspect one where, but then also, a second example of God aspect one is Uncle Sam. Does Uncle Sam exist? Well, Uncle Sam was an idea that came up for army promotion, but Uncle Sam has taken on an existence that is far greater. When we talk about Uncle Sam, we talk about the United States, or nationalism, or the American government, and you begin to realize that Uncle Sam is a powerful figure in terms of his capacity to change the world and shape. Now remember, I'm talking God aspect one here. Nationalism is a religion with a God, but without God aspect two, because Uncle Sam, well, does Uncle Sam command? Does Uncle Sam act? And this actually takes on a lot of resonance in terms of Bible conversations, because throughout the Bible, there's this ongoing deep conversation about the status of the Lord. And the book of Ezekiel actually lays this out, and you can find this in my church channel. I have a separate channel for all my church stuff, if you don't know that. When I was going through the prophet Ezekiel, it's amazing how how so often the Lord is paralleled and sees himself as adversary against the other empires. Now, this is a deep and complicated question, but when you get into God aspect one, you know, even setting aside personal agency, which is probably not the best phrase, but it's the best I got in this moment. Setting aside personal agency, which is the kvetch, the complaint that Sam Harris and Andy have with respect to the existence of God as a person, God aspect one is tremendously powerful. And if you go back to my video where I talked about the anti-masturbation God versus the axiomatic God, this is the issue, because in many ways Jordan Peterson is bringing back God aspect one, number one, shamelessly. He's far more hesitant about aspect number two. But does Uncle Sam exist? Do you pay your taxes? If there's a if the draft comes, do you show up? Do you argue about politics? Now you might say Uncle Sam does not exist. Yes and no, but in many ways, the state is God in the modern frame. And this is why politics has, within a context of separation of church and state, now in our current secular frame, politics displaces religion. And if you look at mainline Christianity, many within mainline Christianity see politics as the forum for action, unlike less secularized, God aspect two rich, say, evangelical Christianity, where now in the moral majority and even Billy Graham, they got into politics. There's a huge debate about whether or not that should have happened at all, for the sake of the church, for the sake of the community that really believes in God aspect two. But Jordan Peterson is coming online and saying, these gods are real and they determine our lives, and the degree to which we stand with respect to them impacts us deeply. And again, this is God aspect one. Now, my conversation with Jonathan was extremely interesting to me, and if you look at that conversation, you can see I at some point kind of took on the questioner, the interrogator, the interviewer, and I don't know to what degree Jonathan and I are on the same page of some of these things. My ideas about angels and demons, I don't know if they're a little different from Jonathan's. I don't want to get Jonathan into trouble, because here's the thing about being part of a church community, which people don't like. You can get into trouble for thought crimes in a church community. A lot of the vows and promises I take as a Christian Reformed minister regard belief as such, and profession as such. And when I sign the covenant of office bearers in the Christian Reformed Church, this sets me in a category where, to one degree, I have to be careful about my speech and I have to be careful about my belief. Now, this chafes Americans to a great degree, and there are good reasons for that. But this gets into the freedom of speech, thought, and so what I do as a pastor is, there's a certain amount of jeopardy I take on making all of these long videos. Most of my colleagues are never going to watch these because they're just simply going to get bored with them, or the Jordan Peterson stuff doesn't interest them, or so on. I do know some of my colleagues do listen because they tell me when they're working in the shop or whatever. So there's a lot going on in this conversation. But does Uncle Sam exist? Yeah. See, that's and if you really take that seriously, and again, Peterson doesn't get into that directly in Patreon September, but if you listen carefully about this imaginary, now that's Charles Taylor's word, this imaginary that we're living in, people act as if Uncle Sam exists. They live as if Uncle Sam exists. Uncle Sam is enormously powerful, so they fight over the laws that Uncle Sam has and the power that Uncle Sam has to compel. This is God aspect one in many ways. Now, I also noticed in Andy's, you're going to have to watch the casual use of a word like supernatural, because once you say that word, you evoke an entire imaginary filled with all kinds of implicit assumptions. Now, maybe you're owning all of those assumptions, but That's a very deep, that's a very big package tied to that word supernatural. And I have similar issues with, Jonathan was talking about consciousness and supernatural, consciousness, spiritual or spirituality, especially consciousness and spiritual or spirituality. These are words we use as social lubrication to avoid defining terms. Consciousness is difficult to define, and so we tend to throw it out there, as is spiritual, as ways that will maybe sort of, blunt some of the edges of differences between us. They're words that are often used. I'm not saying Jonathan used the word this way, but anytime I hear someone say consciousness or spirituality, I almost think that they've taken, I took a lot of pictures on vacation like you used to do. I almost think that they tend to unfocus the picture when they say that. And they unfocus it for social lubrication terms so that we might get along better. And I would rather have us sharpen the terms and say, okay, what exactly do you mean by consciousness? Sam Harris, I've been doing some transcription of the first Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson Vancouver talk, just because sometimes when I take the time to actually transcribe what they say, I hear it better and I pay more attention to the words and I listen better. I've listened to that talk maybe 4 or 5 times now in audio format, and I'm probably going to listen to it some more because Peterson's going to release it on September 1, and then I'm not going to use any video from that until it is released publicly, and then I'll give it some of the treatment that I usually give it. But these words, when we use these words, things tend to the focus gets softer, the resolution gets less, and I think especially around some of these words, same with God. That's why I've got God aspect 1, God aspect 2. We've got to sharpen the focus. We've got to find out what's going on. So supernatural, again, node in the network, Fry and Vico. Maybe Andy and the node in the network guy should start watching each other's videos, because there's a hierarchy, and that's real. So I've got 8,000 subscribers. Jonathan Peugeot has 20,000. Rebel Wisdom has 20,000. These are 2 channels I'm following closely and kind of stalking. Jordan Peterson has 1.4 million. These guys just have subscribers in the double digits. Well, okay, so find conversation partners where you are in your hierarchy and make the most of those, and don't worry so much what your status is. And that's what I like about both of these guys. They're putting stuff out on their channel and they're having the conversation, and it's always easier to talk down. Well, it's easier to talk up to the hierarchy but have conversations down in the hierarchy. And so this is part of the reason why now I'm at an 8,000 level in the hierarchy. I want to kind of elevate some of these guys from below, because I think they're making a contribution, and I think they're modeling good things in terms of, we can't all be way up on the hierarchy by definition of hierarchy. So the ethic is to practice good citizenship at whatever rung you are on the hierarchy. And I think, especially as a Christian, good citizenship means bringing up those below you. And probably, again, it's the opposite of what I call the relational polarity of the age of decay. It gets into some of my own little lingo or nomenclature. And this is deep into our culture. So I think Andy and Node in a network are both doing a good job of having conversations. And so if you're looking for channels where you can talk to the guy and leave comments and get a lot of feedback, boy, you got someone in the single digits, you leave a comment, you'll be his best friend. So go ahead and do it. The materialist language, using terms for which your evidence is eroding. I do really believe that materialism started to die in the battlefields of World War I, and it reached its peak in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and it's on its way out. I think that's true in terms of science. Now, I know obviously people say, yeah, Christianity died in the 16th century or the 15th century. Okay. This is the point. We can we can have differences. We can have differences of beliefs and still talk to one another. That's, I think, critical and fun. So, is Paul Vanderklay a fundamentalist? Boy, I'm gonna have to come to terms with that word. That word gets used a lot between Peterson and Sam Harris. Andy used that with respect to me. To what degree am I a fundamentalist? Now, there's a cliche that says fundamentalist is always to the in Christian terms, fundamentalist is always a word you use to the person to your right, or a person who's more literal. Well, you can decide what term you want to use for me. I won't take offense. I don't consider myself a fundamentalist because I think historically it relates to these little pamphlets that came out early in the 20th century in the middle of the modernist liberalism conflict, and these were the fundamentals. So I would probably, if you have to line all these things up, I would probably subscribe to many of the fundamentals, in that I believe in a bodily, physical, historical resurrection of Jesus Christ, and my biblical reading tends towards the conservative, but not as conservative as some people would like. I'm not as antithetical to evolution as some people would like. I'm not as tribalistic with respect to treating with disdain other non-Calvinists or non-evangelicals. My relationship with the word evangelical is conflicted too. But I am a full-fledged believer in God aspect too. I believe Jesus came into a locked room and ate a fish and had Thomas touch his hands and feet. And if you've been listening to my videos, there's a reason why I believe this is in fact central. And in fact, since I have started this entire process through the Jordan Peterson thing, I am probably more convinced of the historicity of the resurrection, because in terms of my developing worldview, and it continues to develop, I'm not dead yet. In terms of my developing picture of my worldview, I see it as increasingly even more essential that the central moment of history would be true at every layer of existence. In other words, there was a relational layer, there was a physical layer, there was an emotional layer, and that this gets into my philosophy and my worldview and my understanding of Christianity. So, does that make me a fundamentalist? Depends on your definition of fundamentalist. I believe Jesus appeared to Paul of Tarsus on the road of Damascus. And this is where we get into God aspect 2 of personal agency. And where it wasn't merely... See, when I talk this way, I'm already talking within the materialist frame. Okay? And that biases... Again, watch Node in a Network and watch him talk about Fry and Vico, because I think that's really helpful. And what he notes is that Fry is heavy in the notes in Maps of Meaning. And so early on, a lot of Northrop Frye got baked in to Jordan Peterson, and that's behind some of what's going on here. So I believe Jesus appeared to Paul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus. Was there phenomenology? Of course. But I also believe that, and this is where my Calvinism, I'll often ask people, why didn't God show up to the Apostle Paul before the stoning of Stephen? God chose not to. You mean he let Stephen die? Yes. If you read the book of Acts very closely and you look at how Stephen is represented in the book of Acts, Stephen is in many ways the most Christ-like figure in the book of Acts. Luke intentionally uses language he used of Jesus in the book of Luke about Stephen in the book of Acts, and very much sets up Stephen's stoning in some ways parallel to, the passion of Jesus Christ. And Stephen sees heaven open and all of this stuff. And you might say, well, God should have appeared to Paul before Stephen was killed, before he participated in it. And I say, that's up to God. Now, when I'm talking like this, what am I saying? I'm using God as an agent, God as an actor, God as a chooser. And this is exactly why I get comments in the question sometimes. Calvinism is a heresy I used to subscribe to. Well, there you go. I guess Calvinism is a heresy I continue to subscribe to, because Calvinism majors in God's decision making and I think reflects the tenuous grasp we have on just about everything, and that this long story is God's story. Now, I do believe we are real agents, and I do believe we have real responsibility, and I do believe we have sufficient will to be accountable for our decisions. So, does that make me a fundamentalist? I don't know. Depends on your definition of a fundamentalist. So I'm sorry about the paucity of content. And some of you will say, paucity of content? A number of you were saying, I couldn't keep up. Well, I've given you a little chance to keep up. You might get more chance to keep up. And I'm not saying because I feel a sense of indebtedness to you for more material. I just want to make more videos, and I don't have time, and I'm frustrated by that. So I'm making this little video to say I'm frustrated by it because I don't have time to make a longer one. So I really want to make more, and C.S. Lewis is out there, and actually I've started looking at some Francis Schaeffer in terms of, now I know this is, you're going to take away my fundamentalist evangelical card for this, but I've never been terribly impressed with Francis Schaeffer. I like the project, but now maybe I'm gonna give him a deeper look and a fairer look now. But often when I listen to him, because I'm listening to the audiobooks or read him, I'm not that impressed with Schaeffer. Now, a number of you have said Peterson and Schaeffer are doing similar things. Yes, so was Plato. So was Augustine. So was Dallas Willard, because I want to bring more Dallas Willard in here. So was C.S. Lewis. This is, and these are the kinds of conversations that I mean by when I say this isn't just about Jordan Peterson. This is about the most important conversations we can have. It sounds trite. But these are conversations about the meaning of life. These are conversations about how we should choose to spend our lives. These are conversations about the foundations of our personhood and our action in the world. To me, these are the most exciting conversations, the most fun conversations. And what I love having is conversations with people about this, and not, and this is what's made this thing so fun. And this is what's kind of coalesced around Jordan Peterson. And this is what all of my videos are about. Jordan Peterson, again, is acting like a wick. And around this wick and the light, a lot of interesting conversational partners are gathering. And we're having a lot of interesting conversations. And I'm thrilled by this. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this. So it's a busy time of year. My wife and some of my kids are going back to school or getting new jobs. I've got more and more requests for conversations. I've kind of set up a system now to handle some of that. We'll see how that works in the weeks going forward. But I've got tons of pent-up ideas, online community conversations, more face-to-face type events, lots of stuff there. Jordan Peterson is releasing the Sam Harris video on September 1. It's just going to be more to do. In a sense, Peterson also in the Patreon thing kind of listed out a timeline. So yeah, the no Exodus until maybe November of 2019. Sad. Because I wanted to get to the Sermon on the Mount. Because when I'm going to be looking at Dallas Willard and Plato's Republic and Augustine, and maybe bring in some Francis Schaeffer and some C.S. Lewis, that's going to kind of revolve around dike, justice, dikaiosune, righteousness. What is Plato's Republic about, really? And most of you read the last books, but I'm going to spend some time on the first two books, because I think actually there's a lot in the first two books that sets the stage for, as Plato sets up his, why is he talking about this city? Well, this is going to get into the city of God and the city on a hill and these cities, and what's the relationship between a person and a city. There's a little tease on where I'm going with the Republic. I'm also thinking, last year I did a Parenting Through Adulthood class. I might do a class on Dallas Willard, Plato's Republic, Augustine, City of God. A lot of my church members, I know this is going to be complicated for the Christian Reformed Church that has a strong Sabbatarian tradition, but a lot of my church members, even the one who grew up in Christian Reformed Church, they've lived in California and been corrupted by our culture, so that they like going out to eat after church on Sunday along with all the other Baptists. and they're smoking less and drinking less, just like the Baptists. Oh, it's assimilation into evangelicalism. Help us. But anyway, I'm thinking about, I've been trying to think, so what I'm doing, I got my meetups over here, and I'm getting so many people to the meetups, and then the church is over here. Now, I'm a pastor. Do I want to bring the groups together? Yeah, but I'm not going to do it in a way that forces anyone. I'm not going to do it in a way that guilts anyone or twists anyone's arm. I'm Californian enough and liberal enough and American enough that I don't think it's productive. So I'm always looking to create spaces where Christians and non-Christians can come together for good conversations. Now, Justin Brierley's been doing this on Unbelievable for years, but that's a radio show and he has high status people and so on and so forth. I just like places where we can do this in person, and it isn't win or lose. It isn't debate necessarily, although there is some debate that goes on. It's friendships over the divide. It's getting to know each other, because if you're a Christian in Northern California, you're not that different from the non-Christians, and vice versa. And so and in other ways you are. And so, this is just very complicated. So this whole video is about why this isn't just about Jordan Peterson, because what Jordan Peterson has facilitated for me, and in a sense the gift he's given me through this whole thing, has just been the opportunity to talk to guys like Andy, who is an atheist, and that's fun for me. I like to hear what Andy thinks, and to talk to Jonathan, who's an Orthodox icon carver, for heaven's sake. I mean, when would that have happened? And to talk to people in Europe, and to talk to people in Australia, and to talk to people in Fresno, and to talk to people of all kinds of different backgrounds. And now I've always, diversity. To me, that's diversity. That's just one aspect of diversity. Again, if you know my story, that I've talked about plenty in my past videos, I've lived diversity all my life. I'm high in openness. I should post I took Know Yourself, or whatever report Jordan Peterson's Big Five is, and I'm a very extreme person. I'm like a 98% and a 1% on a lot of these things. I'm very high in openness. I'm very low in neuroticism. And I love to get into the room. And so when we talk about at our meetup, what do we want out of these meetups? I tell them I talk a lot on my videos. What I really want to do at the meetups is listen. I want to hear what real people have to say, and YouTube does this. And so, Node and a Network guy, I get to listen to what he has to say, and he digs into Northrop Frye because I don't have the time to, and I learn stuff from him. And Andy chews on Jonathan Pajot's Santa Claus videos, and I learn things from Andy, and I learn things from Jordan Peterson, and I learn things from Glenn Lowry. I was just listening to Glenn Lowry this morning. Love Glenn Lowry. The more I listen to Glenn Lowry, the more I realize how much I'm on the same page with him. Even though I grew up, one of the first elections I really remember as was I 18, something like that, 17, 18-year-old, when Jimmy Carter lost and Ronald Reagan won, I was crestfallen. I've never been but my church has diehard Republicans and diehard Democrats in it, and we have no problem getting along. Our church has white folks and black folks, rich folks and poor folks, and people who don't believe anything like Calvinism. They're in my church. God bless them. And I have no problem. If atheists want to come into my church and not sing any song and not put a dime in the plate and sit and listen to the sermons and eat cake after church, you're more than welcome. This is what I think the church should be. This is what I think the church should do. This is the gift Jordan Peterson has given to me. And again, I pastors are liars, yeah, but we're really thieves. I'm gonna take this gift and I'm gonna use the stuffing out of it. It's gonna become like the little dolly one of my daughters had. She wore that dolly out. I'm gonna wear this dolly out, and because this is for me an opportunity to have conversations and to learn and to enjoy and to meet new people. And I mean, this is just tripping out my openness thing like you wouldn't believe. And so I'm going to keep doing it. So there's an answer, and I'll send you a link where we can have, you know who I am, whose question I'm addressing, because you sent me a Facebook message 2 days ago. Or yesterday, I don't remember. Days are blurring together. It's been so doggone busy. But yeah, there's my answer. And if you want to do an online conversation about it and probe me a little bit more, I feel kind of bad. I was such a pastor to Jonathan Peugeot. Pastors, they're not only, we're liars, we're thieves, and we're nosy as heck. You know, a good pastor wants to get into your life, but we do it gently. We ask questions, and then we probe, because people just want to spill their guts, and they do it. And then pastors like me are like, ooh, that's interesting. I haven't seen that. People think of pastors sit in their office and are isolated. Oh gosh, I got to keep moving. Isolated from the real things in the world that could hardly be the truth. People walk into your office and tell you the most incredibly private things. And why? Because they need to unburden their souls. Yeah, it's another rambly video, and it's already longer than I expected it would be, but you know, what does Jordan Peterson mean to me? So there's your summer school project, or your summer vacation report. So there it is. This will be the video for today. If I have a chance to do another video today, maybe I will, because like I said, I've got so many of them pent up in my head, and I've got so many projects, and I have only 24 hours a day, and I've got, you know, and I'm not, when I say I've got my day job, by no means hear me complaining, because to pastor a church is hard, but there's no greater privilege. When someone comes into your office, when someone opens up their heart to you and tells you their pain, their sorrow, their joy, there's no, you know, there's no, it's just such a beautiful gift. And as a pastor, when you receive that, you treat it as a holy thing, as a sacred thing, because again, as C.S. Lewis says, you've never met a person who isn't, you know, we're clothed in, oh gosh, now I sound like a new ager. I don't mean it like that. We're a nephesh, okay? We're one being. We have an integrated world, but you know, Jordan Peterson's the spark of the divine. It's the imago Dei. It's you will never meet another greater thing than another human being. Except for God. But what is God? God aspect 1 and 2. So call me a fundamentalist. But so pastoring is an amazing thing. One conversation I remember with my father. He was late in his career as a pastor, and often by the time pastors get to my age, they get out of it, because it is demanding and it is hard, and they get tired of, you know, when I say there's no greater privilege or no greater honor someone gives you when they come in and they open up themselves, a lot of what people just do at you is complain. And it does get tiresome listening to people's complaints. And that's why I don't think I could be a therapist to sit in a room with people and listen to them for an hour. I think I would. I think I'd want to pick them up sometime and shake them. And I'm surprised. Peterson must have a great deal of self-control, because we know what's in his heart, you know, but he obviously has abilities to sit and listen to people. And as Scott Alexander said, he's clearly an excellent teacher, and he was probably an excellent therapist. And the loss of his private practice is a loss, I'm sure. I'm sure he helped and touched many people's lives, but his mission is to touch way more people's lives, and so this is what he's doing at his mission. And again, I am rambling. This is why I do PowerPoint. Otherwise, I will sit here and I will ramble, and I will never end a video. That's why I always tell Freddie, land the plane, Freddie. Freddie always wants me to call out the Freddie and Paul show. Watch the Freddie and Paul show. But maybe once a week we do the Freddie and Paul show, so there's Freddie and Paul show. Leave Freddie a comment. You'll make his day. So here's my video for today. Oh crap, I gotta run. Anyway, thanks for watching. Sorry again for the lack of real content coming out. I'm gonna do the best I can.